Let's jump to the story from the Daily Dot. Why is Kamala Harris getting accused of trying to frame Tucker Carlson? The letter was from a man in Alabama named Tucker. Because she did this, and right away, anybody who's saying knows exactly the game she's playing. She learned this from Tim Waltz, I imagine, because Waltz is the master of assumptive manipulation. Make a statement that you know will mislead people because of the assumptions they will make from it, and then let them believe falsehoods. Kamala Harris tweeted, Tucker, thank you for writing to me. While we may not agree on every issue, we both know that every person in our nation should have the freedom to live safe from gun violence. The majority of Americans stand with us in support of common sense gun safety legislation. And there's this letter that looks like it was written by a 12th grade or whatever. Vice President Harris, one of my absolute favorite things in America is how people of different backgrounds and beliefs have the freedom to communicate with each other. We're so blessed to live in a country, blah, blah, blah. In the spirit of establishing common ground, even though I am fairly conservative and we may have our disagreements, blah, blah, blah. All the best, Tucker. Now, immediately, everybody says, Tucker Carlson, we get the point. Ed Krasenstein, you know him, you love him, says, I bet this letter is from Tucker Carlson. To which I responded, remember when I called you evil? Tucker Carlson responded with a fake letter of his own from Kamala. Letter from a fan. Dear Tucker, I can't believe I'm writing you this letter and there's hearts over every, and then it's signed Kamala. This looks like, so why is she being accused of trying to frame Tucker? Well, it's not so much frame, is she's trying to trick people into thinking Tucker has been cordial with her and offered her up some support when he absolutely has not. Because most people only read headlines. You're going to hear rumors of, oh, Kamala, here's their intention. Their intention is that someone's going to say, oh, did you see that thing where Kamala was thanking Tucker because they found some common ground on gun control? That's going to what we call purple monkey dishwasher into liberals being like, even Tucker Carlson was saying we should have gun control. That's the manipulation play. Mm-hmm. We only see it because we're on the internet every single day. But if this was back 20 or 30 years, this would have landed on the news and people would have just genuinely believed that it was a conservative praising Kamala Harris.
Sorry. I was reading, it's Robert Heinlein, Beyond the Horizon, an Armed Society is a Polite Society. That's the quote. But did it say it's signed from Tucker? That's
it says Tucker.
Yeah, it's vague on purpose. And there's even a mention that even though I'm conservative, I think XYZ.
And then she says, Tucker, thank you for writing me. We may not agree on every issue.
Oh.
It's really sounding like she's having a conversation with a prominent conservative person that she personally knows she doesn't agree with. Otherwise, it makes no sense. A constituent who writes to you and says, I may be conservative, you don't be like, well, we may not agree. Why would you say that? If it's someone prominent who has publicly disagreed with you, you'd say, thank you for writing me. I know we don't agree. It's a manipulation game. Tim Waltz does it when he says stuff like, when I deployed and the things that I saw, and then I come back and they say, you're on your own, buddy. I just can't believe our mental health issues in this country. And then he wants you to believe. He wants you to imagine in your mind there's shelling going on. So what he actually said was he was at a hearing on mental health for veterans. And he says, when those of us who deployed for enduring freedom, we come back, they give us the horse whisper and they say, be nice. Well, we're not going to be nice. We? Bro, you were in Italy. And the joke was that he's got PTSD from getting bad spaghetti or something. Granted, he was doing security work in Europe. That's not where the war was, but he wants to trick you. He wants you to assume when he says, when we were deployed for Operation Enduring Freedom, we came back and they gave us the horse whisperer and said, you play nice.
Or when he says, millions of family like mine have been affected by IVF, right? But actually, He didn't use IVF as a fertility treatment. He used a different fertility treatment that doesn't involve creating an embryo outside of someone's body. He is implying this. EV Magazine had posted on X where they're saying the Harris campaign is basically girl bossing and gaslighting. That's how they're going to win this election, they think. And I just find that to be kind of sick and gross. I mean, they will tell you that Trump is the captain of misinformation and false news, and he has to constantly be fact-checked, and then they pull a stunt like this. What?
He's got an actual speech where he said something to the effect of, we deployed for this country in Operation Enduring Freedom. And he's like, and I had, my kids, and they did this. One night I remember being on the Air Force Base in Bagram, and I saw this, and blah, blah, blah. It's called assumptive manipulation. Mm-hmm. So what he did there was, I was in the military and was deployed. Man, my kids, I got to see her because I came back right away. But I remember being in Bagram one day, trying to make it seem like he was deployed. Break, for plausible deniability, I was at Bagram. He was at Bagram as a member of Congress, not on a deployment. But that's the game you play.
And the families like mine, millions of families like mine have been influenced, but not my family, but families like mine.
Exactly.
And
then he tells his story on stage about the treatments. We didn't know if they were going to work. And then he's like, oh, those are my kids right there, and I love them. And then his kid's crying. He'd be like, I love you, Dad. That's my dad. And I'm like, your dad's on stage lying.
With this, I bet they got the thing. They're like, oh my God, his name's Tucker. We got to run this.
No way, dude.
Oh, I think it's a real letter from some kid
Scroll down,
named
let's see
Tucker.
how many views on this tweet.
2.9 million. But who doesn't sign their full name? Why you're gonna write a letter to Kamala Harris and be like, from Ian?
It could be fabricated. It could be. But if it wasn't, I could see them being like, ooh, let's hit this one hard. Let's just say Tucker. People will think it's Carlson. Let's just make a big thing out of Tucker.
Okay, here's what you do.
Like if Tucker truly got a letter from a girl named Kamala, that would be something he might be like, thank you, Kamala.
So what you do is you go and find someone. You be like, you ask your assistant, find me someone named Kamala who wants to write a gag letter. We'll pay him $50. And then you can literally say, this letter actually came from Kamala. Here she is. And so they'll be able to be like, Tucker actually wrote this. But I got a question. It's written in pencil, handwritten, and there's no last name signed to it. Who? Just Tucker.
It was vague intentional.
That's me. Vague
I don't
intention.
sign my full name. I just say Ian.
Look, I have to give the campaign credit. I've as annoying and you think you called it evil, all the factual inaccuracies. Look, they're trying to win an election. So the Trump campaign, be aware. Kamala Harris is pulling on all the stops to win an election.
Dude, it's the dirtiest thing. Saying that Trump is a threat to democracy and then the Democratic Party installing a candidate with no primary is the threat to democracy. And they say, accuse your opponent of what you are doing. This is like an old tactic. Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. Mm-hmm. That's like what is that like a Antifa origin of Antifa?
It's a Marxist code book, essentially. They live and die by that book.
Marxism is the idea of was that just about getting power? Is like
making your movement successful. Yeah,
it is the most blatant, dumb manipulation. But if people aren't ready for it, then I guess it's easy to. And if you hear it enough times,
well, and the next headline's going to be, conservative political commentators freak out about Kamala Harris level. Like they're going to act like the response to this, calling it sort of a manipulation tactic, is actually just like conservative hysteria. I mean, this is the thing. It's do something wrong, get caught, and then just act like the other people are being unreasonable. And we'll do this over and over again until we get to election day. And I think that, should be a concern for Democratic voters, right? Obviously, Republicans are Kamala Harris fans, but if you're moderate or independent and this is her strategy, which is to sort of be manipulative to get her way, what do you think she'll be like in the White House? It'll get worse because at that point she has no reason to try and sort of even play moderate at all. And I think that American people, we were talking about this a little before when we were talking about low trust in intelligence agencies and the FBI and CIA. If you think your president is just there for herself and is going to do or say anything to promote left totalitarianism to her own benefit, I don't think that she is beloved enough to pull that off.
So, clarification: it was not Marx nor Rules for Radicals to accuse your enemy; it was the Nazis.
What it was
Goebbels.
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propagandist.
Accuse the other of that you are guilty.
It is so blatant, and it's like I don't know what the right adjective is to describe what that is. It's. I mean, you should know by now that is a totalitarian tactic. If you study Nazism, which you should, and understand the history of how a small political party can seize control of a government. It's pretty blatant. You repeat a lie enough times, and then people will start to believe it. That was another one of their tactics.
I mean, Marx may have said something similar, too.
You accuse your enemy of what you are doing. That is it's just so...
Well, that's how they got out of the Burisma scandal. Joe Biden was guilty of a quid pro quo. He committed crimes in Ukraine. He went to the president of Ukraine and said, I want a personal political favor in exchange for the United States' congressionally approved loan guarantees. And they said, you have no authority to block that. And he says, call the president, see what he says. If you don't fire the prosecutor in 6 hours, you're not getting the $1 billion. So they did it. When Trump found out, because Biden bragged about it, Trump calls, I think it was Zelensky, he calls and says, what was this? There's this video of Biden saying something about, you don't get the $1 billion, you're not firing unless you fire the prosecutor. What was that all about? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, well, take a look into it. I want to know what this is about. And so with that, they go after Trump and say he did the quid pro quo. So Joe Biden breaks the law. Trump trying to investigate it is Trump breaking the law. That's the game they play. Then when we come out and say Joe Biden did a quid pro quo, they go, "Oh, nice try," because Trump did. And this is actually fairly common in all scales of law enforcement. Whoever calls the cops first wins. Period. And it's not absolute, but there's an old con artist trick where what they'll do is they'll take a dummy wallet with their ID in it, empty, wait for you to leave an ATM. Most people, like, you can see the screen, you can see their receipt, you know how much money they took out, or you pick a small number. If you don't take money out of the ATM, they got at least $20. Reverse pickpocket, call the cops and say, "I'm following the pickpocket who's got my wallet right now." The cops show up, you point to them and say, "That person stole my wallet." The cops search the person, find your wallet, and then you say, "And that $20 was mine," and they give you the money. Whoever calls the cops first wins. The cops play, it's a game of timestamps. If two people get into a fight, whoever calls cops first wins. That's the majority of times.
Majority, yeah. I saw a video of a domestic violence. A woman called the cops. The cops came and they're like, they didn't know. And the kid, there was a third party. So the cops were able to discern that actually the woman was the guy beating the dude. So they arrested her, the woman that called the cops. But probably, like you're saying, bias. It's like confirmation bias.
Look,
It has to do psychologically what comes down to who do you give presumption to. In any situation, when there's two competing clauses, you have to give presumption to someone. So psychologically, whoever makes their claims first is assumed presumption.
And the cops are like, well, they called for our help. They must be the good guy. Mm-hmm. So I love it in like GTA. What you do is, if you push somebody, you know what you can do in GTA is if you like keep bumping into someone, they'll eventually fall over and try and fight you. So you instigate the fight, then run away from them, they follow you, and then find a cop car. And then once they hit you, the cops come out and arrest the other person.
Sounds like NATO. Pressing up on Russia. Hey, they attacked us.
That's right.
Oops.
Yep. But anyway, yeah.
I think that, it's like accusing the Russians of trying to conquer Europe when it's the liberal economic order that put military bases in Germany and has basically created NATO.
And has taken over Europe.
Yeah. And Iraq and Libya and attempted in Syria.
Yeah. You know that new Reagan movie is coming out? Mm-hmm. And they have that cover version of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, Tears for Fears. What a great song.
I know. Yeah.
And I'm just like, guys, you got it wrong. Everybody doesn't want to rule the world. They really don't. I know it's a fun song, but I'm just thinking about it, and they're playing it with the movie Reagan, making a point about presidential power and the conflict and all that stuff. But it's just like, the reality is, most people just want to be left alone, and they want to watch the game and have a pizza with their kids, and they want to make sure their kids are getting a good education, and then they're doing the right by their family. Very few people actually want to rule the world. Vladimir Putin, I do not believe, is one of them. I should say this. It's possible Vladimir Putin wants to rule the world. He certainly doesn't have the capability to do so. I don't think he's a good guy. I think he's a power-hungry, maniac who's maintained power in Russia for decades by manipulating the political system. But he is not someone that I view as a prominent threat. China's a much bigger threat to the United States in terms of economic expansion and the exploration and colonization they're doing. But NATO has taken over and colonized Europe and is trying to take Ukraine. NATO's got Latvia, Estonia. They're bordering Russia already. Russia's got Belarus, and then NATO's trying to take Ukraine. And Ukraine's got a Russian base in Sevastopol, and that's their only access. That's their access to the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, and NATO tried to take it away from them. And so, Russia was there, and the U.S. came in.
And when the pro-Russian regions of Ukraine said, yeah, we're going to declare this little decree, and we're going to say we're pro-Russia, Ukraine was quite literally about to go F their up. I don't know if you're aware of what happened. Mariupol, similar stuff happened. So
what happened?
Well, Russia maintains that their whole operation was to protect the individuals of the pro-Russian separatist regions from the Ukraine government. There were lots of skirmishes between the Ukrainian government and the pro-Russians. Look, lots of pro-Russian Ukrainians have gotten quite literally taken out of their house and tied to trees. We've seen many of those viral videos. The Ukrainian government is not very kind to the pro-Russian regions of Ukraine. And
Zelensky's saying right now there's no reason to even talk about a ceasefire. He's going to talk to Biden next month, and we'll just press forward. I thought they were this oppressed underdog that we had to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars colors on. I don't think people have an accurate picture of the dynamic between Ukraine and Russia at all.
There's a very interesting through line between what happened to Germany after World War I and what happened to the Soviet Union after the breakup of the Soviet Union. In World War I, Eastern Germany was split off and given to Poland. And then the Polish government started excising the actual Germans that lived there. And Hitler, that was one of his complaints, is like, you can't just genocide Germans just because you control the land. So when the Ukraine was split off from the Soviet Union, and then there's Russians living in Eastern Ukraine, and they start abusing those people because they're ethnically not borderland Ukrainian. And then the Russians are like, you can't just slaughter native Russian. Like, that's a very similar danger that can lead to, like, we're going to take our land back so that you can't oppress the people or slaughter the people. I wish I had more information about what they did to the Germans in Poland.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.